Hi there, and welcome to the Creative Operations Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Groom, and in this podcast, we'll be talking with creative operations leaders in all kinds of industries, from franchising to finance, from healthcare to hospitality and beyond. We'll be looking to uncover best practices and to see trends that are coming to help you keep your creative operations on brand and on budget at the same time. Enjoy. Welcome to this episode of the Creative Operations Podcast 2.0. I'm your host, Kevin Groom, and today we'll be talking about one of my favorite topics. I call it local marketing chaos. And it's that condition where field-based marketers are either executing in a less than fully disciplined way, or they've come to rely excessively on your resources and your people at headquarters and in your in-house creative operations team. So we're here today to talk a little bit about how that condition can arise and how you can move from it into a world where you're operating more efficiently and your local marketers are operating more effectively at the same time. So let's get started. Let's first begin by understanding why local marketing chaos arises in the first place. On this screen, you can see two very different worlds. On the left-hand side, we have the world of the brand agency and the creative teams. It is consistent and efficient, moving from concept through execution, through the results, through insights that lead to strategy and brief and more concepts. And that cycle, that creative cycle, has been practiced over time. It's your profession. But on the other side of the screen is the local world. A world in which folks are operating often without much of a plan, working with vendors of many different kinds, from local agencies to local media to printers and vendors, and all of this often happening without any clear feedback mechanism to show the team back at brand if the work they're providing and the assets they're providing to the locals are having the right effect and being used in the right way. This is the environment in which local marketing chaos can arise. Now, here's the real problem with local marketing chaos. It's cyclical in nature. So if you have this condition arise in your local markets where users are depending excessively either on their local vendors or excessively on you, it can spark a vicious cycle. Here's how it works. Start at the top of this diagram. As an in-house agency, generally speaking, you don't quite have enough budget to get everything done that you want to get done, and you particularly don't have enough manpower or resources to really execute in each individual local market in a coordinated and cost-effective way. There's just not enough of you to go around. So, moving to the right. As a result of that, you find yourself getting swamped with one-off requests, different markets asking you for your assistance all at the same time and almost always on a last-minute basis. When those local marketers can't get the assistance that they need, what happens? Well, they start going rogue. And as they go rogue, that leads to your brand consistency suffering and the use of your assets actually declining, because they begin to depend more and more on local vendors who are doing things in their own unique and often not very brand compliant ways. Now, when that happens, you find yourself not only with an uncoordinated execution of your brand, but you find yourself without sufficient information about what's actually going on in the field in the first place. And because you can't see what's going on, you cannot justify what has gone on. And that means you can't justify your agency budgets. So you end up with fewer resources the next year than you actually need. And the cycle goes on and on. So the question is, how do we break out of this vicious cycle of local marketing chaos? How do we create enough order and discipline at the local level so that we create enough oxygen at the brand headquarters level for real strategic work to be done? Let's talk about that. This is what I call on this diagram an example of what most brand operations, creative operations teams start to do when they feel chaos closing in. First, they'll begin by creating some shared resources. Look at the yellow section in this diagram. They'll have shared resources for assets like Dropbox. They might use a simple workflow tool like Slack or Monday.com or an extranet or SharePoint, all in the effort to take the brand consistent assets, deploy them to the local marketers, and begin to let those local marketers self-serve for themselves. This is what I call maturity level 2. It's not all the way there, but it's better than what was. But if you look at this a little bit more closely, you'll see that there's still plenty of intersecting and overlapping lines at the local level. Still lots of duplicated assets, lots of time spent searching for and not finding what you need. And even more important, look at the bottom of this diagram where we see that local insights, a real sense of what's going on in the local markets, what they're doing and why they're doing it, it's still a question mark. So if you manage to get here, you may find that you address some portions of the local marketing chaos problem, but you're still sailing into some pretty heavy headwinds. What you need to really solve the problem, as Liam Neeson used to say in that old movie, is a very particular set of skills. And this slide sort of demonstrates what those skills need to be. First, you have to be very good at providing easy access to the assets that local marketers need without cluttering them up with assets that they shouldn't use, shouldn't see, and just get in their way in the first place. So you need easy, secure access to brand assets. That Dropbox that we saw on the previous screen, that's a great place to begin. It may not always be the place where you want to end. Second, you're going to need templates that create guardrails for your users so they know what to do and what they shouldn't do. And even better, makes it difficult or impossible for them to do what they shouldn't do. Third thing you're going to need, content. Lots and lots of content. If there's one thing we've learned about local marketers, it's that they depend on the brand to give them designs and to give them copy. They are not copywriters and they are not designers, though sometimes they think they are. So you need, in order to solve the problem of local marketing chaos, to be able to provide fast access to headlines, creative concepts, body copy, in much the same way you do with digital assets. And in fact, it's best if you can provide the images and the copy together as creative concepts. That makes life simple for your local marketers. That allows them to self-serve while still remaining on brand. Two more things. A workflow. And when I say workflow for your local marketers, I do not mean anything complicated. Most of the time, your local marketers have about as much time to spend thinking about marketing as they have to decide what they're going to order at Starbucks this morning. So your workflows need to be super simple, one-step approvals, easy access to the template that they're looking for, and the ability to produce it without any approval whatsoever, if that's at all possible. Streamline and simplify. Here's what that means. Lock things down a little bit more tightly than you might at first think is necessary. Take away the approval loops, and here's what you'll do. You'll accelerate delivery, and you'll encourage your users to stay on brand. And then finally, what's the fifth thing you need? You've got to have access to reporting data that tells you what your local marketers are doing and when and with what assets, with what templates, with what content. That's going to help you decide in the next cycle where you're going to focus your creative attentions, where you're going to invest the most valuable thing you have, your in-house agency and your creative resource time. Your reporting data will help you to decide what to double down on and what to get out of the way and to excise from the local marketing conversation. So those are the 5 essentials. Now, you can get all of those things in many different places. You can create all of those things yourself, probably using tools that are close to hand right now. But there are systems that put all of these capabilities in one place. And if you're trying to solve the problem of local marketing chaos, you may want to look at a marketing toolkit that provides all of these things. So think DAM, think templating, think workflows, think content databases, and reporting. Those are your 5 must-haves. Now, whether you do that with a system or you do it with a collection of systems, or you do it with your cell phone and your tireless efforts. There are three hurdles that all of us run into on the way to getting rid of local marketing chaos and really paving the way for local marketing success. And here are the three problems that you need to know are on their way. First, winning user adoption. Let's say that you're a franchise network and you have some franchisees who've joined you just in the past 2 years, and they are hanging on your every word. They want to execute the brand the way you see it because they bought into the brand for that very asset. But along the way, or in another part of your network, you've got franchisees who've been with you for decades, multiple decades, and who've decided, not without reason, that they actually know how to implement the brand and really don't want to hear too much from you about that at all. If you have that kind of diversity, you're going to find it a challenge to create any one system that will keep all those different kinds of users happy. How can you tackle that? Listen hard. Generally speaking, most of the local marketing systems that we see out there are not enormous systems. Their user communities number in the hundreds and the low thousands, not the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands. Here's the good news about that. You can listen to what users are asking for and respond to it in a way that scales up to the size of that user community without inundating yourself or your local marketing team, at headquarters. It is possible to do. The second thing that's good about smaller user communities, again, numbering in the hundreds and the low thousands, is that you can establish a set of roles for each one of these types of users that you have, and organize the community so that they feel they're being well served, and you are making yourself more efficient. Point number two, hurdle number two, integration complexity. Remember that I said that we need to pull images from one place, content, headlines, and creative concepts from a second place, user information from a third database, product or regulatory information perhaps comes from yet another source. Integrating multiple data sources is often made to sound easy. But in an environment like this, where all of those pieces of content can change unreliably, unpredictably, quickly over time, that integration complexity can add up to a real challenge, especially if your creative team isn't well versed in building enterprise class systems. This is one reason why you may want to look at an all-in-one kind of toolkit, something that will serve your print, your digital, your landing pages, your email, all your communication channels in one place so you can simplify the integration challenge. And then finally, the third point. It's a hurdle, but as a creative, you probably would see this as an opportunity. And that is maintaining content freshness. We've been building local marketing systems for about 20 years now. And I would say that the number one thing that we see bring users back to systems, whether they're beautifully designed or they're a little rough around the edges, whether they're brand new or they're years old, what brings users back is new creative. You're creative. And so what you want to think about doing there to overcome the challenge of content freshness is change your mindset from doing big brand launches and think a little bit more about dripping that content out over time. So that literally every week you have the opportunity to say to your user community, hey, here's something new. Here's something new to try, a new tactic, a new image, a new set of creative concepts, a whole new document or media type. Drip out new content over time, and you'll find that you create lasting engagement with your user community and you overcome the challenge of content freshness. Let me summarize real quick and say thank you along the way. Local marketing chaos is something we all feel, but it is not something that we all have to live with forever. If you can organize your user community to expect good brand assets delivered on a timely basis and in a regular way, and if you can get those users to come to a common place to access those assets under your watchful eye, you will be able to gain momentum over the problem of local marketing chaos. And you'll find as time goes by that it increases confidence throughout this whole supply chain, this creative supply chain. Your creatives at headquarters will feel like their assets that they work so hard to create are being used. Your local marketers will feel more effective and confident when they're trying to create brand executions on a self-service basis. And your leadership will feel more confident that the budget they're yielding to you each year is being used appropriately. And that means next year, you'll probably have a little bit more budget to boot. So hopefully this was helpful. Next episode of Creative Operations Podcast is coming soon, so stay tuned. And thanks for listening.